Hello, and welcome to this Power Hour event delivered by HM Revenue and Customs. This event is going to be covered by myself, Sean Robson, a VAT specialist in HM Revenue and Customs. So here's a quick agenda. So we're going to be going through questions from April's Power Hour posed by yourselves, and then we're going to go on to business, non-business in the education space. And this is going to cover non-business supplies, closely related to education. And then we're also going to cover business, non-business for unregistered customers and for VAT registered customers in respect of business, non-business calculations. And then we're going to conclude with a question and answer session from questions posed by yourselves during the live event on the 18th of May. So just to cover off some of the questions that we had on the previous Power Hour event in April. So in respect of partial exemption, we had a couple of questions about this, asking if there was going to be any guidance or sessions on this, and I can confirm yes, that there will be a future session on partial exemption, and you should keep an eye out for this. We will issue communications where you can find this and when this will be available. In respect of specific guidance, we appreciate that there is only some specific guidance on academies, which we will reference towards the end of the presentation, but it is our long-term aim to improve upon the guidance currently available. And then exempt income was also quite a hot topic. In respect of this, we would advise that income is generally reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and there could be some specifics. So we're not going to cover specifically exempt income in this presentation. We also noted that there was a couple of questions previously in respect of gift aid. If you would like to provide specific details on this, so we can provide an answer to yourselves, then we would ask you to provide this via the contact details towards the end of the presentation. And then going on to contact details, as advised previously, these will be shared at the end of the presentation. So, firstly, non-business education. This is defined by HMRC, where the education you provide is wholly funded by direct funding from local or central government. This is non-business. Now, going on to a hot topic, supplies closely related to education. So the term closely related to education refers to goods and services which are for the direct use of the pupil and necessary for the delivering of education to that pupil. So the key thing to keep in mind here is that the goods and services provided must be necessary for the delivering of education to pupils. Again, it will be dependent on specific situations in question, and therefore each case will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We would ask you to review the guidance available, as VAT is a self-assessed tax, and therefore we expect you to come to your own conclusion. Where there are areas of uncertainty, you can contact HMRC for review. However, this is unlikely to be a definitive view. Now, going on to unregistered for VAT. So, where your academy or academy trust is not registered for VAT because you do not meet the VAT registration threshold, or if you've chosen not to voluntarily register for VAT, then you can make claims for VAT on purchases made in respect of non-business supplies made by yourselves. This is done via the VAT 126 claim form, which can either be completed by post or online. We would encourage you to use the online form if possible. We would also encourage you to provide a breakdown of your claim via a spreadsheet, as this provides for a smoother review process and will allow us to repay your claim swiftly. If you incur costs in respect of an exempt business supply, this VAT is not recoverable. For example, if you incur costs that are solely related to exempt lettings, where you incur costs that are both for business and non-business supplies, then an appropriate apportionment should be made. Again, for example, purchases made may be in respect of a sports hall, which is used by both the school in delivering education and also lettings to the general public. In this scenario, you should apply a fair and reasonable method of apportionment, for example, applying the percentage of lettings income over total income. So, moving on to VAT registered customers, the business non-business calculation. So, prior to the completion of a partial exemption calculation, a business non-business apportionment method is required to be completed when non-business supplies are made. This is because the partial exemption method only deals with the apportionment of business income, and therefore the inclusion of non-business income could distort the overall recovery percentage and impact the level of input tax recovery. This is regardless of the potential minimal impact on the partial exemption calculation. A business non-business calculation does not need to be approved by HMRC, but as always must be a fair and reasonable method and be available to be checked by HMRC if requested. Where inputs are solely incurred for non-business activities, this would be recoverable under Section 33B. Where inputs are incurred for purely business activities, these will need to be incorporated within your partial exemption calculation. If you incur inputs, which are used for both business and non-business supplies, again, such costs in relation to a sports hall used by both students and the general public, apportionment will be required between the non-business and business use using a fair and reasonable method. An example of a potential method is that of an income-based method. However, this may be unsuitable if there is no identifiable non-business income in respect of the sports hall. Instead, a time-based apportionment may be more suitable. We're not going to cover partial exemption in this presentation. However, as advised previously, we do intend to run this session at a later date, and we will advise you of this. Now, coming on to the guidance section of this presentation. So the guidance available to academies, specifically, these are covered in the VAT Edu VAT Education Manual, specifically VAT Edu 50000 and VAT Edu 70000, and then also the VAT Government and Public Bodies Manual, specifically VAT GPB 4000. And then also the VAT Notice 749, local authorities and similar bodies. And then for education, VAT Notice 70130, education and vocational training. There's also one other piece of guidance available to academies, specifically for academies, and that is VAT Information Sheet 0911. This can be found by searching 0911 VAT Information Sheet on the gov.uk website, and this will take you to links in the National Archives. Although this information is held in the National Archives, it is still in use and is still valid guidance. And now onto the contact details page. Here are the contact details that you can use to contact HMRC, whether you're VAT registered or non-VAT registered. So, as with all customers, we would expect you to contact the VAT helpline before approaching ourselves directly, so through the LA sector mailbox. Failure to consult published guidance or the VAT helpline may result in a delay to responding to your inquiry. In respect of VAT 126 issues, the VAT Online Services team will be able to assist you with gateway access. And then the number for the VAT 126 team specifically, these will be able to help you with issues with your claim and potentially chasing up your claim as well, but they will be unable to assist you with gateway access because they do not have access to these systems. Now, moving on to the question and answer portion of this presentation, I'm going to run through some questions, provide some answers to some of the questions that were asked during the live presentation on the 18th of May. So, the first question, if a supplier isn't VAT registered, but the services would normally be VATable, which code should we use? So, if the supplier is not VAT registered, then they should not be charging you VAT. It depends what code you have set up on your particular system. As HMRC would not prescribe a code, we would just need to be able to understand why VAT has not been charged if we were to review your records. And then the next question, so how should we treat expenditure on things like levers hoodies where there is VAT on some items? So this depends. Generally, if you sell them, then it could be recoverable under normal business rules. But if you give them away, then it may be recoverable under Section 33B. The next question is in respect of setting up direct debits. In respect of this, because we don't have the full details, it may be hard to give an answer, but we would advise that you should be able to do this on the VAT online account, and if not, you should contact the VAT helpline. Then the next question, so again, regarding coding. So this is about VAT coding next to each nominal within the chart of accounts, and they've advised this would be helpful. In respect of this sounds like it may be something that you wish to discuss with a tax advisor and or your software provider. And the next statement in question is in respect of a recent audit undertaken by HMRC VAT tax specialists. And in respect of this query, the question asker has asked about the treatment of sports facilities, because during the check it was advised that although we are we, HMRC, are content that the income is for the hiring of sports facilities. We have not been able to prove that the supplies are closely linked to sport or physical education. And this is despite sales invoices stating that they are for the hire of badminton courts and swimming pools, etc. And so the question asker is asked, could you clarify what you think the issue is with this, please? So in respect of this, the issue would be to confirm that the letting is specifically used for the sporting event. So for example, that the sports hall is being let for football or badminton rather than just a space to hold an event in. And any background information on this would be very helpful to help us provide a response, but we would advise you to contact the officer in question and discuss this with them. So the next question, I need to speak to someone about a VAT claim I've made. Is there a specific number to contact? So again, we would advise you to use the contact details provided on the slides. And the next question about gateway access. So when I log into the HMRC gateway, it is not accepting our postcode. One possible answer is that I've created gateway IDs previously, and perhaps the VAT 126 registration number can only be linked to one gateway. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. The VAT 126 registration number can only be linked to one gateway. So for access issues, we would advise you to contact the VAT Online Services using the contact details provided. So the next question. So again, will there be a follow-up session on partial exemption? So as advised, we do plan on delivering a partial exemption session for academies, and we will make available communications on this when we intend to run this. So please keep an eye out for this. So next one, they stated, I tend to have more questions with regards to expenses within our trusts and what VAT code to be used, such as for therapy sessions and also language transactions. I am never too certain which code to use. So this sounds like quite a specific question. So we would ask that you contact ourselves using the contact details provided during the presentation. And then the next one, sort of a similar one. So how do I get a clear answer with regards to certain activity regarding providing services for Teaching School Hub? Is it exempt outside the scope of standard rated? There is a variety of answers on this. So as with the previous question, this sounds quite specific, so we would ask you to provide full details using the contact details provided. And the next question, so when we receive late invoices, how do we claim back the VAT on these items if they fall outside of the claim period? So the time limits for claims start to run from the due date for the return that you're liable to make after you have both incurred the input tax and received the associated VAT invoice. So if you don't have the VAT invoice, then you're not in a position to make the claim. But then once you receive that VAT invoice, then you should be able to make the claim, and this is covered in the VAT error correction notice. So how do we change the mobile number that is linked to the VAT 126 return? So our understanding is that you can change the number attached to the return manually each time you submit a return. So when inputting your contact details, make sure that you put in the correct details. So the next question again about change in details for that 126. So we've had a name change for the trust and no other changes, but they're unable to claim the VAT 126. So it says the ref is linked to another company. So yeah, unfortunately, we are unable to amend the names of claimants using the same reference, and we would advise that a new gateway ID is needed. So the next question, we have sports lettings for more than a 10 slot booking. They are invoiced monthly. Can these be classed as exempt? So on the face of it, yes, it does sound like they can be classed as exempt. However, we would advise you to see the specific guidelines contained within paragraph 5 of VAT Notice 742 and VAT Manual VAT LP 19000. Then no question, again about access, if someone has left the school for the VAT 126. So we would advise you to ring the online help desk on 0300 200 3701. And then again, a question that I think has been asked twice. So please can you answer the question on Amazon VAT numbers and whether this can be claimed? So yes, where you have a valid VAT invoice, the VAT should be able to be claimed subject to normal rules. So someone stated here, it'd be really good to have specific training on VAT rules, specifically regarding VAT income and when you become liable for registration. So again, part of this will be covered in the partial exemption training that we intend to deliver, so keep an eye out for this. but also the current VAT registration threshold for annual taxable sales, so excluding exempt or outside the scope of funding, is £85,000. And also a list of certain exempt activities can be found by searching VAT rates on different goods and services on the gov.uk website. So that concludes the presentation and all the questions asked. And again, if you do have any questions, you can contact us on the details provided, and we will be in touch in the near future to advise on the partial exemption presentation that we intend to deliver. So all that remains to be said is thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and I hope you have a good day.